Good day, students. Finally being added to the game after being introduced more than 8 months ago, Black Swan is here, and she brought with her a resurgence for the dot teams, which was long overdue. Therefore, today, let us take a look at her kit, relics and stats, light cones, team compositions, Eidolon breakpoints, and pull value. So sit down, open your notebooks, and sharpen your pencils, as today's class is hereby in session. Amazing personality, good outfit as well, levitates in battle, and is most likely related to Kafka. What more do you want? Her Arcana Tarot card is also well implemented via the animations in battle. All in all, a solid 69 out of 100. With her basic attack, Black Swan will nonchalantly throw a divination card on an enemy with a set chance to inflict 1 stack of Arcana on it, and if the target is afflicted with either wind shear, bleed, burn, or shock, you can also inflict 1 additional Arcana for each of the respective dots to an additional 4 stacks of Arcana for a total of 5 Arcana stacks for each basic. Of course, this upper limit is only attainable during her ult buff, as during her ultimate, the Arcana effect is regarded as wind shear, bleed, burn, or shock. Outside of the ult buff window, you are looking at potentially 3 to 4 stacks, each basic depending on the team composition. Therefore, in order to maximize her single target damage, you will want to weave in as many basic as you can in your rotation to maximize the amount of Arcana on the enemy. The traditional rotation for this will be skill, basic, basic, and repeat once the defense reduction from your skill has worn off. Black Swan's skill is a blast type skill, and while it has a higher base chance to inflict an Arcana compared to her basic, it has an overall lower Arcana stack limit, which it will provide compared to her basic at a maximum of 3 for 3 units. That is until you unlock her second major trace. After that, she will essentially apply the same amount of Arcana as her basic attack, but for a blast radius. The biggest part of her skill, though, is the ability to reduce the defense of each afflicted enemy by an amount of 20.8%, and for 3 turns nonetheless. This makes her an invaluable unit in dot compositions, as you will effectively have a permanent 38.8% defense reduction, as all the dot units will run the Prisoner Relic set. The fact that the effect lasts for 3 turns as well enables her to be very flexible in her rotation. As mentioned previously, if you want to maximize her single target damage, you will repeat her skill every 3 turns to refresh the debuff. But if you want to maximize her AoE damage and have your ult come sooner, you can forego a basic and go for a skill, basic rotation, bringing you to a skill point neutral setup, while also maximizing both her AoE and having respectable single target on the main enemy you are attacking. At the same time extremely creepy and visually stunning, her ultimate is also very synergistic with the rest of her kit, as it allows her to trigger more Arcana stacks with her basic during the ultimate 2-turn duration, which also comes with a 25% damage increase for 2 turns, which is nothing to sneeze at. Also, during the duration of her ultimate, the Arcana effect on the enemy will be regarded as wind shear, bleed, burn, and shock effects at the same time. The biggest mechanic related to her ult, though, is that it enables her Arcana stacks to not reset once during the ult duration when they are triggered. What this enables is for you to essentially do double the damage you were going to do normally, and to allow you to build up more stacks for a big nuke at the end of the ultimate window when the Arcana stacks will go into effect. If you add Kafka to the mix, you can also add a 3rd instance of damage when she detonates the dot present on the enemy, as Kafka's ultimate and skill will also not reset the stacks of Arcana on the enemy when used. Arguably, the most important part of her kit, and this is where her main source of damage will come from. The talent will add 1 additional stack of Arcana at the start of each turn if the enemy takes dot damage, meaning she will have a perpetual engine of Arcana generation. While the enemy has Arcana stacks on them, they will receive the 240% wind dot at the start of each turn, and while this may seem on the lower side, The kicker is that each stack of Arcana adds an additional 12% to the base multiplier for a maximum of 50 stacks. So, you can see how easily it can get out of hand. Now, of course, you won't see the 50 stack cap reached without investment in her constellations and without the simulated universe buffs as well. But even with just 4 stacks, her multiplier will be higher than Kafka's dot multiplier. And considering you should be able to easily go over 10 stacks while under her ultimate effect, her dots will hit like a truck. But this is not even all, as once you manage to stack 3 Arcana on an enemy, she will also launch another attack on the adjacent targets while also inflicting 1 Arcana on these targets as well. And as this ability does not have a cap on the number of triggers it has, you can essentially trigger it a ludicrous number of times in pure fiction and at least twice in MOC scenarios. Going past the 3 stacks, if you can reach 7 stacks on the enemy, she also makes the dot damage done while the stacks are present to also ignore 20% of the main target and adjacent target's defense. If you use Black Swan as the solo damage dealer, this means that this defense ignore will only be triggered by her dot damage once it triggers at the beginning of the next turn. But if you are also running Kafka, you can also benefit from the 20% def ignore for the dot detonation she will do, as again, Kafka's ability to detonate the Arcana stacks will not refresh them. Therefore, while initially her numbers might not appear that impressive, once she gets going, Black Swan becomes a real monster. The technique will enable her to get some free Arcana stacks at the start of the fight, and with some luck, you can reach the 3 stacks threshold from her talent on each enemy unit, allowing you to start the fight with some impressive AoE damage already triggered. As this technique will also not trigger the battle when used, it is very synergistic with other dots techniques, especially Kafka's, as you will be able to enter the fight with both Arcana stacks on the enemy and with Kafka's dot, allowing you to potentially inflict insane opening damage. The way her rotation will work will vary depending on whether you want to maximize her AoE damage or her single target damage. If you want to maximize the single target damage, then a skill followed by 2 basics will maximize your Arcana stacks on the enemy while keeping your skill point positive. For more AoE damage, you will drop a basic from the rotation, bringing you to a skill point neutral rotation. You will also want to use all the external dot detonation abilities from either Kafka, Sampo, or Gwynaphan during her ultimate buff window, when the Arcana stacks are maintained, and when they are also considered as all type of dot variants. Not to mention this is where her 25% damage increase debuff will kick in. Candleflame's Portent increases this unit's damage by an amount equal to 60% of effect hit rate, up to a maximum damage increase of 72%. Basically, a free permanent 72% damage increase for Black Swan, as you will want to build above the 120% effect hit rate threshold needed to maximize this buff in order to guarantee your Arcana stacks to hit. The 120% effect hit rate is also easily achieved through substats and the use of a light cone, which also provides effect hit rate. Even if you are not going for 150% effect hit rate needed to guarantee your skills will apply Arcana each time, this is still a great non-conditional damage buff. Goblet's Dredges. Every time an enemy target receives DOT during a single attack by an ally, there is a 65% base chance for the target to be inflicted with 1 stack of Arcana, stacking up to 3 times during 1 single attack. More Arcana stacking potential scales harder with abilities that have multiple hits, like Sampo's skill, which can hit the same enemy a maximum of 5 times. Viscera's Disquiet. After using the skill to hit an enemy that has Wind Shear, Bleed, Burn, or Shock, each of these debuffs, respectively, has a 65% base chance of inflicting 1 extra stack of Arcana. Amazing Trace unlocks the potential of her skill to apply the same amount of stacks as her basic attack in a blast radius. For Minor Trace's stats, she will receive 28% attack, 14.4% wind damage, 10% effect hit rate. In terms of relic sets, the obvious winner is the Prisoner in Deep Dot set, as it will provide her with the needed attack stat, and the Defense Ignore passive will stack with the Black Swan's own Defense Ignore from her skill, boosting her damage significantly, as Defense Ignore does not suffer from the same diminishing returns as other damage increase buffs do. Apart from the Dot set, you can also run the Eagle of Twilight set for the additional damage bonus and to squeeze in an extra skill or basic after each use of her ultimate, which will improve her energy generation. If you plan to run her with an ERR rope and the tutorial light cone for the 3-turn ult rotation, you can also use the Musketeer set, as it will provide you with the needed attack stat and a nice speed buff, as well as buffing the 2 basics in your rotation. Apart from these, you can mix and match all the 2-piece attack and speed effects from whatever relic sets you have lying around. For planar sets, the IPC set is the clear winner, as you get not only hit rate from it, but also attack for reaching a hit rate threshold you were already aiming for, SSS if you have more hit rate from your relics so you can balance your stats out, or the Glamoth if you can reach its speed thresholds. For stats, you will need a combination of attack, effect hit rate, and speed. You can also go for an energy regeneration rope if you aim for a 3-turn rotation. For effect hit rate, you will want 156% effect hit rate to guarantee all your abilities are generating the Arcana stacks, and although this seems high, you can get 43.2% from the body piece, another 10% from the IPC set, another 40% from multiple light cone options for a total of 93.2%, and with another 10% from her traces, you are already 103.2%, meaning you are aiming for a total of 52.8% from either the other relic pieces or through another unit effect, such as Pela A4, which adds another 10%, bringing the total to 42.8%. For speed, you are generally looking to be over the speed breakpoint of 125, or if you are running Glamoth, 135. For attack, aim to be anywhere above 3,200, which can be achieved from the IPC set passive, which converts effect hit rate into attack. For light cones, obviously her best in slot will be her signature, as it provides her with 40% hit rate in order to achieve the hit rate benchmark needed, while also providing 20% attack and a 28.8% defense ignore for your dot damage. The only caveat is that the attack and defense ignore effects will trigger only after the first use of your ultimate, but they will last for the entire battle. The Hertastore Light Cone is also a fine option, as it will help you cycle through your ultimate faster, and the windbreak damage is also nothing to sneeze at, although you will have to compensate running this light cone with more hit rate stats from your gear pieces. And finally, in the 5-star light cone category, Kafka's signature will be an amazing choice as well, as it provides you with not only the stats you are looking for in every dot damage dealer, speed, and attack, but also the erode dot will help Black Swan to stack the Arcana stack even faster. Moving on to 4-star choices, Eyes of the Prey will be an excellent choice, providing her with the same hit rate as her signature and with a 48% dot damage boost on top of it at S5. So if you have it at S5, this will be her best 4-star option in terms of damage. But an even more appealing option in my opinion is the Event Light Cone before the tutorial mission, as this one also has the 40% hit rate attached to it. But the energy passive along with an ERR rope will make your Black Swan able to do a 3-turn rotation to get her ultimate if you skill basic, making her entirely skill point positive. If you don't have the tutorial light cone and don't plan to run ERR rope on her, she will get her ultimate up in a 5-turn rotation if you choose to play her skill point positive with 3 basics and 2 skills, and in 4 turns if you go for a skill point negative with a 4-skill rotation. Its showtime is also serviceable, as you will want more than 80% hit rate on Black Swan. Therefore, the attack buff is guaranteed, and the damage buff is also secured, as Black Swan can apply the defense down debuff through her skill. And as this is a free light cone that everyone can max out, It's probably the second best 4-star option for F2P players after the tutorial light cone if you can manage to get the required hit rate from the Relic stats alone. And to clarify, I am saying it will be the second best choice only because the tutorial light cone will ease your stats requirement through the hit rate provided, and also the great effect of enabling you to get your ultimate faster. In terms of raw damage, Showtime will come on top, especially if you already have the needed hit rate from the relics. If you have a spare good knight at higher impositions, it would also do a fine job since you will have no problems maxing out the debuffs for its passive in a dot team. All in all, Black Swan has many fine options for each type of player, from her signature which will boost her damage considerably, to the 4-star tutorial which will improve her rotation. Every player will have the tools to play Black Swan in a different manner. Her E1 is the most valuable Eidolon, as this is essentially a Ruin Mei ultimate for dot units, except this one is permanent as long as Black Swan is alive. Highly recommended if you have the pulls available. E2 improves her Arcana stacking, as it will inflict additional stacks upon an enemy defeat. Good damage increase, but not really worth the investment. E4 helps her energy problems and lowers her hit rate requirements from 156% hit rate to about 120%. Also not that great. E6 is again more Arcana stacks, which translates to more damage. If you want to see big dot numbers, go for it, but in my opinion, E1 is the best stopping point. Well, let's get the obvious out of the way. Kafka will be her best partner in crime, as you are able to detonate Black Swan's dots with Kafka without removing the Arcana stacks from the enemies. You also have an AoE defense down from Black Swan, and an AoE dot damage increase from her ultimate, which will boost Kafka's damage even more. This was truly a match made in heaven. Apart from Kafka, the 4-star dot options will also do the job, depending on the enemy's elemental weakness, but albeit with a lower damage ceiling compared with the Kafka variant. From the options available, you will want to turn your attention to either Sampo or Gneifen, as both of them will be able to detonate the Arcana stacks through their abilities, while Black Swan's ultimate is in effect, although Sampo will need to be E4 for him to be able to do it. But even if he is not E4, his damage increase from the ultimate will boost Black Swan's damage significantly. For the sustain slot, any of the 3 main sustainers, namely Fu Xuan, Luocha, and Huohuo, will serve you well, and they are very much interchangeable depending on what is the skill point economy of your team. But Huohuo will provide you the biggest damage ceiling with her energy regen and attack buff. Luocha will enable you to possibly bring a 3rd DPS or a more SP negative support in the future, and Fu Xuan will just make your team unkillable. Ruin Mei will be the best support for dot teams, and her buffs are all great for Black Swan, more so if you manage to get Ruin Mei's E1 as the defense ignore provided it combined with the defense ignore provided by the dot relic set, and with Black Swan's defense reduction will bring you to a total of 58 defense reduction, and if you also add the signature light cone, you will be at 87% defense ignore, which is quite honestly a ludicrous amount. And finally, if you also trigger her talent defense ignore from reaching 7 Arcana stacks, you will reach over 100% defense ignore, and your dots will send the enemy to the Shadow Realm. Asta is also a great choice for support, as she provides Black Swan with the needed attack and speed buffs, and if you are going for the Glamoth build, Asta is the easiest way to achieve the speed thresholds. And of course, Ting Yun will be amazing with Black Swan as well, as the attack, energy, and damage buffs provided will not only boost Black Swan's damage considerably, but will also provide you with a more comfortable rotation. Apart from the traditional dot teams, you could also bring Black Swan into other archetypes as a defense down debuffer with consistent damage through her dots, since she can be run as a skill point positive secondary DPS. Such a potential team could be a pairing with Dr. Ratio, Topaz, and Huohuo, since in this team, every single unit will enable Dr. Ratio to reach his debuff number easily. You could also swap for the Vonwalk set to have her start first in order to set up the defense debuff for your main carry. Let's now go over some potential team compositions for Black Swan. The first one, and probably the strongest one, will be Huohuo, Black Swan, Kafka, and Ruan Mei. The current Premier team, which has extremely good synergy between each of its members. Huohuo will provide sufficient healing on her own to keep the team alive while also giving both Black Swan and Kafka a huge attack buff and the energy needed to cycle their ultimates faster. Kafka will be able to detonate both her own dot damage and Black Swan's Arcana stacks with both her skill and her ultimate, and if you manage to get the enemy to a high enough Arcana stack count, you can potentially have it trigger a total of 3 times. One from Kafka's skill before Black Swan's ultimate is activated, one time with Kafka's ultimate during Black Swan's ultimate, and the last time when they will pop on their own for a potential insane delayed nuke in under 2 turns of actions. Ruan Mei will also be the cherry on top, boosting both Black Swan's and Kafka's damage simultaneously. Also, every single vertical investment for either member of the team will only elevate it to a ridiculous degree. For more survivability, Huohuo can easily be replaced with Fu Xuan, and you can also be on the lookout for Gallagher, as if he has anything to do with break effect going by the Abundance Light Cone released this patch. He might be a new dot team poster child for the Sustainer slot, and 2.1 is just around the corner. For a less 5-star heavy composition, you can run Lynx, Black Swan, Sampo or Gneifen, and Asta or Hanya. While the damage ceiling of this variant will be lower, this 4-star version will still be able to clear every content you throw it at once the relic sets and stats are properly farmed and raised. Also, the more Eidolons you unlock on your 4 stars, the better the team will perform. So, if you have an E6 Sampo, Gneifen, or Asta in particular collecting dust on the bench, you can put them in coach, and they will for sure not disappoint. And moving on from the traditional dot archetype she is mainly associated with, she can function just as well by replacing Pela in most of her teams, where she will act as a defense down debuffer and secondary DPS. Therefore, before you ask, yes, you can 100% run her with our boy, Dr. Ratio, as can also be seen from the gameplay you can find here in my Dr. Ratio guide. Speaking of Pela, you can also replace either the support slot of the team with a debuffer, such as Pela, and capitalize on the insane amount of defense reduction you will get from Pela's ultimate and Black Swan's skill and talent. She is absolutely worth securing, especially if you are a dot enjoyer, and most of all, if you are a Kafka main. But even if you are not a dot enjoyer, she is also valuable for other teams, as she can act as a blast variant of Pela with her defense down provided by her skill and with higher damage compared to Pela. She will be great at E0 with a number of light cone options, but if you have the resources saved or are a spender, E1S1 will be a good stopping point. And with all of the nitty-gritty out of the way, let's bring the #1 Arcanist of the galaxy into MOC 12 and see how she fares. These are the builds I will be using, and you can pause the video on this part if you want to take a closer look. With that out of the way, let us begin our showcase. Cue the music.
Let's have a bit of fun till I downfall. My love, if you feel like I do right now, don't say you're on the run to the other side, my love. You say you wanna try, but you never do. Sugar, there's a reason why we lose. You say you wanna cry, but you never do. Sugar, there's a reason why we lose. I don't know what you want. Let's have a bit of fun till I downfall. My love, if you feel like I do right now, don't say you're on the run to the other side, my love. You say you wanna try, but you never do. Sugar, there's a reason why we lose. You say you wanna try, but you never do. Sugar, there's a reason why we lose. You say you wanna cry, but you never do. Sugar, there's a reason why we lose.
And that's it. In my opinion, Black Swan is a superb unit with much more flexibility than initially meets the eye, the long-awaited Kafka partner all neatly packed in one amazing exterior. So, have you pulled for Black Swan? Are you planning to? And if you have already pulled, let me know down in the comments how our favorite fortune teller performed for you so far. And until next time, I am Professor Veritas Ratio. And remember, stay smart and sexy.